speaking of progress, one thing that's come up and in your capacity as a board member, how would you say the foundation's approach or scope has evolved over the last 10 years, during your time with the organization?
Well, funding, right? Funding has really changed. When you have a vision that's bigger than what you can afford, right? It's frustrating. Dedrick at one time was basically self-funded, right? I mean, he was raising some money, but most of the money he was getting from speaking engagements. So we had such a small budget with such a big need. And so as the funding started to come, the unique thing about Sims-Fayola, the blueprint was already made. He built the blueprint with growth in mind. Mm-hmm. Once the money came, the growth and the organization was in place. So we were able to immediately start running as the funds came in. And so when we're looking at education and we're looking at making an impact, partnering up with schools was, of course, the pivotal point, right? So you gave a place to work out of. It gave you the boys that you can immediately start impacting, and then broadening that out with the mentoring program. So then instead of just impacting them where they were at school, we were able to start branching out further into their lives, and I think that started to really, start to show the potential of what Sims-Fayola could really do.
And I've heard this in a couple different ways too, around the funding growth and some of the more direct support that are offered to families associated with boys who are in programs. And I just have to say, I think that's an amazing outreach. But could you talk, how was that brought up to the board and approach? Was that a Dedrick-led idea, or how was the impact beyond the school programs really anchored within the context of the organization?
Very good point. It was anchored inside the context of the program, but what you found is that just impacting truancy, empowering kids to want to do more in their school and to do more what they were already being asked to do, we found that there was more need. Right, there was needs that were showing up at home. There was needs that were showing up in the summer, right? And we can't do such a good job with them during the school season and then lose them in the summer. And so we started looking at expanding the programs just to impact what we really thought was just our focus. And then it became a little bit bigger.
Yeah. And it's interesting there too, I think, one of the areas that we've covered with a couple of folks too is now that there are so many folks who have been positively impacted at a young age. Those young men and boys of color are now in early adolescence. Could you take a moment to speak on some of the newer stage programs around workforce development and how you see the foundation making an extended impact through that in the years to come?
And that's open up a whole can of worms there, and that's awesome. So you can't really talk about Sims-Fayolas from the standpoint of what you're talking about as that they're becoming adolescents and as they're coming into the community without talking about our partnership now with the MBK. With My Brother's Keeper is really the launching pad of taking Sims-Fayola outside of the school and creating a much broader focus. And so, yeah, to your point, we are doing that, but we're doing that in the 6 pillars of the My Brother's Keepers program, which is allowing us to look at, how can we mentor and how can we impact when somebody is already in the job force, right? If we walk them through and we have them in the job force. What about when they go astray? And the My Brother's Keeper gives us that correctional institutional part where we're looking at trying to make sure that if they do find bad missteps, that we're able to get them back into society using that. So that was something, a focus that Sims-Fayola just didn't have the breadth to do. But bringing in My Brother's Keepers with that structure has allowed us to expand that very pointed focus of Sims-Fayola to be a much more broader community base.